can go live. We are live.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey guys, it's Damion here. Welcome to the couch this week. I think Jackie looks a little bit different this weekend.
Yeah, she grew a beard.
Grew a beard, a little bit lighter, a little bit lack of melanin here, but welcome to the couch. We're here. We got my people checking in. We're coming in. Hey, how y'all doing? So it's gonna be a fun day. It's a little bit different. You know, we got the masculinity in here, some testosterone going on, and I don't know how this is gonna turn out, but I'm definitely going to. Hey Jackie, how are you? Hope all is well. My co-host Miss Jackie she's checking in with us today. We got some family things going on, so she's not gonna be with us today, but we got our guy here, my colleague. He's another licensed professional counselor in the field. I've known him for several years now. Does awesome work. And y'all will not forget the last name, I promise you. I promise you. His name is Mike Vroom. We'd like to welcome Mike Vroom to the couch.
How you guys
what's
doing?
up, Mike?
How you guys doing?
Hey guys, like he's real laid back. Like y'all thought I was laid back. Like Mike is really, really laid back. But very informative, very, very knowledgeable in regards to mental health, and and we're gonna jump into a good topic today. I know Jackie was really waiting. I know she was itching to be here today, but she couldn't because she really wanted to talk about this topic. And like it said on the previous post, we're going to be talking about relationships and mental health. I don't necessarily have a direction in this, so we're gonna we got some thoughts from a male's perspective and some things that we are going to discuss about relationships in regards to making sure that we can maintain healthy relationships while having, mental health disorders and things of that nature, and tips for some people.
I was laughing about that comment.
About my text going off, that wasn't me. It wasn't me, Jackie. I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and make sure that I put mine on vibrate. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Even though Jackie isn't here, she's still correcting me. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it. But again, guys, welcome to the couch. Of course, this is your guy, Damion Harmon. You're not your average therapist. We're here on the couch where your mental health matters. And again, like I said, we have Mr. Mike Vroom here today. And I just wanted to ask Mike, before we get started, I wanted to give a little background on Mike. I want Mike to kind of let us know, what he does in the field, what kind of got you here. Like, let us know what's going on. Who is Mike Vroom? Tell the people out there.
Let's see. I got. I'll say I kind of always knew I was gonna be in a helping field. I think when I was younger, I always wanted to work with kids because I'm like a big kid. So, I think that was part of it.
Right.
Finding something where I could stay young, and then just always having this. I mean, honestly, it was like since I was like 4 years old, I felt like I needed to do something to make the world a better place. I don't know. I know it sounds kind of weird, but I don't know. I got started in college doing an internship with an autistic child, and I think that's when I figured out that I was going to be good at this because it takes a lot of patience and there's a lot of challenges.
Absolutely,
it's not for everybody.
Definitely not.
You go through some funny things in this field. You get to see a lot of tough things and a lot of funny things. So once I was in college, once I figured out what I wanted to do, once you get into this field, it's really difficult with just a bachelor's degree to make it work or to even make a living. It's not it's not a valued field, unfortunately, because there's no if it ain't making billions of dollars, there's not a lot of support for it. So I think after a couple of years, I worked in residential treatment, which is a facility where kids go when they've been kicked out of the home, when they're kicked out of group homes.
Right.
They're kicked out of the community, basically. I worked at a place like that for about 3 years and realized that I needed to continue my education.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of educational group there, working with kids that have dealt with some of the worst things you can imagine. A lot of them come from broken homes or have been in juvenile detention or all that kind of stuff. And then realized, therapists had a much easier job than I did, and they made more money. And I think I always knew that was something that I wanted to do.
Right.
And it's just you build those. You have more time to build those one-on-one relationships and really make an impact. Versus what I was doing before in the field, which was just trying to help them maintain their behavior in the at the facility, which can be super frustrating.
Right.
So then I went back to school for a couple of years. I did another internship at a substance abuse facility. I did that for a year and a half, where I did individual and I did all sorts of groups. I did anger management for men, dialectical behavioral therapy, relapse prevention, intensive outpatient.
Okay.
All sorts of stuff. And, realized that substance abuse wasn't necessarily the track for me.
Okay.
And then, once I graduated, I got into community support right away in Asheville.
Okay.
So you working with a lot of the homeless population, helping people get housing, helping people find jobs, or those different types of things. And that was definitely a really helpful experience.
Okay.
It's not a lot of therapy as much though, which is more of what I wanted to do. So I did that for about 6 months, and then I got into intensive in-home, where you're working with 8 to 10 families. You get to know the families really well, really have opportunity to make an impact in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also extremely stressful and very difficult to take care of yourself while you're doing that.
Right.
So I took a break from that and did school-based therapy and outpatient, which is a little more, more based on my, what I'm willing to do, my work ethic. I can do, kind of create my own treatment plans and do things my own way. So that was, definitely me. I'm more of a like to do things my own way kind of person. And then, unfortunately, where I was working, I could not make a living again.
Okay.
So I had to move from Asheville to Charlotte, where you can make a much better living. And then I had to take an intensive in-home job again, though, to do that. So I did that for a little bit. And then now I've been where I'm at for about 3 years, doing school-based and outpatient and community, kind of doing my own thing, helping people in the way that works for me.
Okay.
Is really what I want to be able to do. And,
okay.
If I ever weren't able to do that, then I wouldn't continue doing what I'm doing.
Okay. So again, guys, my family and my friends, definitely welcome Mr. Mike. Call him Mike Vroom. You'll never forget that last name. Vroom vroom, like the car goes vroom. That's always been a joke. But again, thank you, Mike, for stepping in for Miss Jackie today and kind of shedding an additional lighter aspect on the topic for today. And again, guys, the topic for today is relationships and mental health. And we're going to come from a lot of different perspectives. Not a lot, but we're going to try to get a lot of them addressed today, at least a little bit. And I think it's more women that are actually checking out this live today. So please, you guys, talk to me, talk to Mike, converse amongst each other, because we're going to have some controversial topics and maybe some opinions. But you know how I am every week. I'm always the devil's advocate, so get ready to kind of chop my head off a little bit. But it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. So let's go ahead and dive right on in with some information regarding relationships and mental health. And one of the biggest things that I found out doing my research recently, just to check to see what the statistics look like for couples that have at least one person that either exhibits ongoing symptoms of a mental health disorder or has a confirmed diagnosis of a mental health disorder. And it actually was about 64%. Well over half of the couples that are in relationships, one of them have a mental health disorder, some way, shape, form, or fashion, whether that's depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, substance abuse issues. And I actually think that's a little bit higher. I think a lot of this is unreported,
Yeah, I mean,
which could definitely skew those numbers.
It was like a 2,000 people survey, so
right, and it was 2,000
skewed.
people, so it's really slim. But for the most part, I think it's in that ballpark of at least 60 to 75, just based on my experiences and seeing couples as well in a marriage and family type of atmosphere. In families that we work with, we often see couples, at least one of them have a mental health diagnosis or some type of issue that kind of impacts their ability to parent effectively and maintain healthy relationships within the home. So that, you know, it often trickles down to the kids, and we often see the kids and the teenagers because they're outcome of the relationships or the dysfunctional relationships that may be presented in the home.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a good chunk of the kids I work with, the majority of them, I mean, it stems from problems with relationships at home.
Right.
Whether it's a broken family or domestic violence. Or,
Right.
Or, abuse or neglect.
Absolutely. So that was really eye-opening for me, just because we already kind of know that about half of relationships, especially marriages, end in divorce. So I'm thinking whether...
Is it like 65% now? Something like that?
Yeah. So I'm thinking, does the fact that the prevalence of mental health, and sometimes it's going undocumented, undiagnosed, does that impact the relationship and ultimately causes it to be dissolved due to, just marital issues? Whether, again, that could be addiction to substances, porn, sex, depression, anything mental health related, that could definitely impact a relationship overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think all those things that you mentioned, and I mean, a lot of it too is generational. It's issues that have stemmed from generations of families that isn't resolved, abuse especially.
Right.
That just keeps it perpetuates itself and continues, and then it affects relationships and future relationships, and because it goes unresolved because
exactly
there's that negative stigma towards mental health of not getting or not dealing with things because you don't want to be seen as having problems when all of us can benefit from mental health counseling and
absolutely. So again, guys, as always, when we're broadcasting live, definitely like and share the page. If it can't help you, of course it can help someone that you know. Like I said, it's at least 60% of individuals are impacted in relationships in regards to mental health. So I think this is a very good topic and some information that could be very vital in helping a couple or individuals, improve their status in regards to their relationship. So definitely like, share, check out the YouTube page, Instagram, the Couch 704. Again, we're on every Monday on the TuneIn app on Power 104.4. Was it Monday, 2 o'clock, 2 to 3 p.m. Tune in. It'll re-air this particular episode. Sometimes it may re-air older episodes, so you can always get caught up and stay abreast on the couch. Okay. So Mike, let me ask you a question. What do you think, just from your experience, whether it's personal or professional, what are some of the things in regards to mental health that could affect a relationship?
Not dealing with it.
Okay.
One person feeling like they're better than the other person because one person has issues and one person feels like they don't.
Ooh.
That's a big one.
Ooh. Okay, I didn't even think about that. So what he's saying is that, let's just say I don't have one, but my significant other has a mental health diagnosis.
Got depression. They've struggled since they were a teenager.
Right.
And you never had a diagnosis.
Right.
So then you're constantly kind of using that against them. You know, like, oh, it's because you're depressed, or which is a terrible thing to do, but that happens a lot. You know,
Right.
You need to take your meds, or you need to go to treatment, or you need counseling. You know,
Right.
And not taking ownership of your your own
Exactly.
problems in the relationship because of the person's diagnosis.
Wow. So again, one of those things when you're developing a relationship with someone, I think it is important to understand their background, whether that's just from a historical standpoint, parents, grandparents, and the way that they live, the way they grew up, and is that a question? Like, when you're like getting into a relationship, do you kind of ask that question? Like, have you ever been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, or have you ever been hospitalized, or do you kind of just, because you're in this field, do you look at the person and kind of just look at them from afar, or just kind of engage with them to see if they kind of meet criteria for certain things when it kind of sticks out?
I mean, being a counselor is definitely something you're automatically aware of those things,
right,
a lot sooner than other people, but it doesn't mean that you still don't make mistakes and see red flags of situations that you don't need to be involved in. When I say that, I mean like someone that has unresolved issues that's not ready to be in a relationship. And sometimes, one person's more ready than the other. And, oftentimes a person with a diagnosis, they can kind of latch onto somebody else instead of dealing with their issues. Like codependency.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think that's a big thing that happens, and sometimes you don't see those signs that person may not be ready, and then you kind of get yourself involved in something that you shouldn't have, and that's a big thing too. So
right, and I appreciate that comment, definitely, Mike. But also Yolanda is on live with us, and she says that when getting to know someone, I ask them to tell me a story. At our ages, we all have a story. We definitely do have a story. Would you tell them that like on a first date? Or would you wait till you know that it's kind of serious to say, well, if I struggle with anxiety or I got post-traumatic stress because I was in the military or something like that, like, do you tell that person? When is there a good time? These are some of the questions that we're going to try to answer and kind of get you guys' feedback. Definitely. Hey, what's going on, Nard? And he says even deeper, individuals that have been sexually abused as a child. That is huge, because that definitely
especially if it's unresolved. I mean,
yes,
even more
absolutely. So. I appreciate that comment, Nard. I appreciate you. Definitely, let's talk about that, like sexual abuse, and like for the stories that we hear. Sometimes it's a close relative, someone in the neighborhood, and I've worked with 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds that have been molested, raped when they were young as a child, and then they often have difficulty maintaining relationships because of that unresolved trauma.
Yeah,
and they tend to lash out. They tend to exhibit some depression sometimes, and often avoid being vulnerable,
or just trying to avoid dealing with it altogether.
Right.
And substance abuse,
or
smoking or drinking or different things.
Absolutely. Which again, that's one of those things that ultimately affects a relationship, and this, I think, is a pretty huge percent when you're talking about the ramifications of some behaviors or some events in your life that leads you to utilize substances. Because I always say it's usually something that triggers substance abuse. You just don't want to wake up one day and like, I'm just gonna get high and drunk and just stay that way.
And especially with the sexual abuse stuff. I mean, you just look at what's been happening in the media too, like all this stuff that's starting to come out. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's so much more.
Absolutely.
We see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a huge issue that just doesn't get talked about enough, and it affects people on so many levels. A lot of the women that aren't even able to talk about it because they're afraid of the things that can happen from, or the ramifications from talking about it. I mean, so then you hold that in for 15, 20 years, and then it perpetuates itself through anger or depression.
Absolutely.
It's two sides of the same coin. So
right. And I think along the lines of the sexual abuse, some of those responses or the behavior in regards to relationships, I've seen, and just in my experience working with a lot of individuals that experience trauma in that fashion, they're either going to be, and this I'm talking about unresolved trauma, they're either going to be sexually promiscuous, or they're just going to shut it out totally, or some of them, and don't kill me, some of them, go to the other side and just don't.
Yeah, that's a common thing that happens.
They were molested by a
men and women. That's a common thing that happens.
Right. But don't quote me. That's not that's just an opinion of mine. The opinions expressed on the couch are not necessarily all the way 100% accurate. Y'all know how I go. So another question that I had, Mike. Do you feel like relationships can be successful when it's impacted by a mental health disorder?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's got to be the person. Let's say one person is suffering from depression. The other person's got to be non-judgmental, willing to try to understand, patient, encouraging. I had written down a few things of different things that you can do.
Yeah.
Things like tell me what I can do to help. Creating a safe environment for that person, a safe space, so they don't feel like judged all the time for having this issue. Because the fact of the matter is, in this society, the majority of us go through these different things at times.
Right.
Whether it's labeled as depression or not, all of us experience symptoms of that, and go through different things in our lives.
Right. Right.
So I mean, if you're gonna judge somebody for feeling depressed, then you need to look at yourself, because that's wrong. But I mean, creating a safe environment, expressing concerns if they're not getting help, trying to be their partner. You got to go through ups and downs. Like, if you're really committed to somebody, you're gonna deal with no matter what. You know, they lose a loved one, they're gonna be depressed. Like, you're gonna have to deal with that. You're gonna have to help them. They may need to get counseling if they're going through something like that. Just something that we all have to go through.
Would you even suggest at a point that that the partner be included in therapy as well, especially if they're married?
I mean, yeah, if it's affecting the marriage and if it's something that is good for the relationship, each case is different. But absolutely, I think that helps the person that's struggling with the depression not feel alone. Like, you're the one with the issue.
Right. Right.
So it's we'll go in there together, and I'll help support you, and I can learn things to help you too.
Right.
While you're dealing with this, because you lost a loved one, for example.
Right.
I think that's a really positive way of dealing with things together.
Okay. So, next question. Let's move on to something I guess maybe that may be a little bit more controversial. And I think both of us as men feel like we've experienced being in a relationship where our significant other, our partner at that time, suffered from a mental health disorder or just some symptoms on a regular basis. And let's talk about how you dealt with it and what did you learn from that experience. And you guys are out there as well. If you experienced, or if you were the partner that had a mental health disorder and you were in a relationship and it struggled, tell us what y'all did to kind of combat that, to make it better. And if you were on the side, the receiving end of the relationship with the partner that had mental health disorders, how did you deal with them, and how are you currently dealing with it? I'll definitely take the comments out. We're live, so I'm going to look at your comments, might read them out loud, and kind of shed some insight on what you can do to kind of help as well to improve your status as well as your partner's status in the relationship. But give me some juice, Mike. Like, give me something.
I could say, in my 20s, I'm not in my 20s anymore. Everybody thinks I'm in my 20s. I definitely, I think being in the healing profession, sometimes you attract people that need to be healed.
Right.
And when you're naive and you don't realize that, or you jump into things too quick, I think is the big thing that causes that to happen. For whatever reason. infatuation or excitement or whatever you jump into quick, and sometimes you get yourself in a situation where you're counseling somebody in the relationship constantly, and that's not a healthy place to be. That's codependency. I mean, you're there for them all the time, and when are they there for you?
Right.
Because
and that's reciprocation.
That's kind of what I was talking about earlier, like being in a situation where somebody's not ready, but you don't realize it for whatever reason, whether you're young and naive or inexperienced or got in too fast or whatever it was. That can be very unhealthy. It can be draining. And, it's got to be 50-50 or, and when I say 50-50, that obviously that changes, 70-30, 30-70. Everybody's got to be there for each other. But, I think I got into some situations like that where it was very difficult, and I don't think I realized that the person wasn't ready, and I think that's more of the way I would want to say it, because all of us have issues, all of us go through things.
Right, absolutely.
And I think, what helped me and what I learned from those experiences especially is just to take things slow, to not rush into things, to build more of a friendship before getting into a relationship, so that you learn more about that person and become friends, because at the end of the day, you want them to be your best friend anyways. So it's better to be best friends and grow into the relationship slowly than to rush into something and then you realize, oh, this person is not ready. And I'm, getting, let's say they're struggling with, I don't know, unresolved abuse issues.
Right.
That make them angry at times, and they have a bad temper because they don't even realize that that's where this anger is coming from, and they take it out on you all the time, and you're just like, what did I do? I'm just sitting here, I'm trying to help you, and you're taking it out on me. And so that's and that's one of those situations where if it's gonna work, you encourage them, you're there for them, you create that safe environment, because a healthy relationship, to me, I like this analogy, it's like an ecosystem. It's very sensitive. Like what you do to one person affects the other person, and vice versa. And I think that eventually that one person that's constantly trying to be there for the other person is going to get drained emotionally, and then they may even get depressed or from doing that. So I think that taking your time and taking things slow is super important. That's probably the biggest thing I learned, and building that friendship first before just jumping into something because you're attracted to somebody or you guys have a lot in common. That's not going to get you through the tough times. You need a lot more depth of soul. Is the way I put it to that. So,
and just to add on to that, I think we've all had experiences in which we've dealt in relationships that were very dysfunctional, and we knew that they were dysfunctional. And I think from a guy's perspective, because this is the men's couch today, I think a lot of what we've dealt with from an emotional standpoint, especially early on when we're younger, we don't understand emotions or we're not able to express and validate certain emotions. We just go off of the behavior, but not actually what they're saying or trying to convey with that anger. Now, we may say, okay, well, she keyed my car, or bust my windows out or try to stab me or something like that, and she's, quote unquote crazy, but you didn't do your homework and your research on this person, and you found out that she was sexually abused as a teenager, and when you got into a relationship and you guys are having sex, and you triggered some of that trauma, and she started lashing out at you, and as an adult now, especially being in this field, you can understand why, and it just wasn't coming out of, thin air. She was actually reliving, a traumatic event in her life. So
yeah, I mean that, sex opens up that can of worms, so to speak. Like it opens up those intimate feelings or those deep emotions that happen, especially if there's unresolved issues. And even so, even if you're taking things slow, still that's not always going to work, because sometimes it's just a matter of when that person starts to get close with you or feel intimate towards you or have strong feelings for you, then things start to come out. So going slow necessarily doesn't always work either. Like it's more about asking those tough questions, like trying to get to know that person's story. Like that one person commented, I didn't see their name, but I mean, I think that's a big thing. And as far as like when to share your story, I think that's you gotta that's for you to figure out, and when you feel comfortable. And if you don't feel comfortable, then you don't need to be messing around with that person anyways.
Makes sense. Definitely. I feel like getting to know someone, sometimes, I feel like if they ask me a question, and I may answer, but sometimes I may not just divulge. Okay, like I'm suffering from PTSD because I went to Iraq, for 3 or 4 years, and something happened over there. I probably won't say that on the first date,
Right?
especially if I'm really feeling the person. I really want to, get a second date. But again, that goes along with the narrative. And the reason why we actually established the couch in the first place is to reduce the stigma associated with mental health. You could probably say that you had high blood pressure, diabetes without even blinking an eye, and nobody would even say anything. But if I said, I got anxiety or I suffer with depression, then it's like, whoa, that type of thing. So it's definitely two sides to everything on that, and there's definitely some pros with being able to be vulnerable and open up and discuss, what's a part of you, because it is, and especially if it's unresolved, that's a part of you, and it impacts you in your daily life, and it's going to impact your relationship if you continue with this particular person or people in general, because it's not just from an intimate level, but it also, spills over into social relationships and who you surround yourself with, and what you involve yourself with on a regular basis.
That's a big thing too. Like who is that person friends with? Like what do they do, socially, and what kind of people, what kind of friendships they have, what kind of people they surround themselves with. That's a good sign of how they view themselves. Like how much respect do they demand from their friendships? And
absolutely.
And I was gonna say also, a big thing for men, and I think that's another one of those stigmas for mental health, is like that it's, you just gotta be tough and not deal with your feelings. And honestly, that's weak. It takes strength to deal with these emotions and these feelings. Yes, and you're living life. Like if you're not dealing with emotions, you're not connecting with people and building relationships and building healthy relationships. I think that's what life's all about. So
yes, absolutely, it's definitely about building relationships, and if you have various layers of dysfunction and unresolved issues, then what you're pouring into other people in order to connect with those people to develop those relationships may be toxic.
Yeah, you can damage them.
Exactly.
And that's I think that's a common thing that happens is people that are in that situation, a lot of times they end up feeling damaged afterwards, or being in a relationship like that because that person had unresolved issues or wasn't willing to get treatment when you encouraged them to, or because they didn't want to have that stigma of something's wrong with them, but it ends up being something that ends up causing the other person hurt and pain, and then they have to get help. So it definitely just keeps on perpetuating itself as it's unresolved, and I think it goes back to it takes strength to deal with these things, and it's not easy, but you got to face the hard truths.
So, well, I guess one question that I had, and I guess I'll answer it too, but how much patience is too much patience? That's definitely a tip when you're in a relationship with someone who's struggling with some type of disorder. When it's too much, when is it time to say, okay, I've tried to help, and I know you have this disorder where you lash out and you're angry, but you're not wanting to receive my assistance, so why do I continue to pretty much put myself in harm's way, whether that's physically or emotionally, put myself in a position to be hurt and damage myself, where I can't be of a service to you or to anyone else because now I'm damaged as well.
Yeah, that's that. I feel like we talked about this last time I did one of these with you. It's where there's a point where if you're starting to feel like I can't take care of myself, this isn't healthy for me. It takes strength to walk away too and tell that show that person like, look, I love you and I care about you, but you got to get help before I can continue this, or to be a part of your life anymore, because this is not healthy for me.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you can't take care of someone and be there for someone and love someone if you don't love yourself and are not taking care of yourself. So
absolutely.
I think those are, huge things to be aware of and make sure that you're, taking care of yourself. It's, body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, and that's what we kind of preach a lot here on the couch, is definitely self-care and self-awareness and being able to be vulnerable. There have been many episodes where I've actually did a lot of self-disclosure, and a lot of people that are a fan of the couch have actually gotten to know Damion a little bit more intimately, on a personal level, as far as thoughts and experiences and things of that sort. So I think in relationships, just as in a therapeutic relationship, there needs to be some level of vulnerability and transparency, for your partner. Sometimes that anger is actually hurt or sadness, and you have to be able to express that. And again, just being able to be self-aware to understand that it is what it is, that so that you can express it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of on the other side of things, like, if let's say you are dealing with depression and you're with somebody who doesn't want to hear about it, or doesn't, give you a safe environment to express your feelings, or doesn't try to support you or help you, or makes things worse for you a lot of times, and, isn't willing to be by your side and stand with you, then you kind of have to ask yourself, is this right for me too? Like, I know I'm going through something tough, and I need somebody that's got my back, and, that it goes both ways, so.
Absolutely. So, are there? I guess the question is, would you personally, knowing that a person has a mental health disorder, would you actually dive right into a relationship? Not dive right in, but knowing what you know. Let's say you vibing with this young lady at a bar, an event, or something like that, and she actually comes out and say it. Like, I struggle with depression. Would you personally, I'm not even talking from a professional standpoint, from a personal standpoint, would you continue to engage this person just based off of that?
I don't think I would just write them off. I think I would want to take things slower to make sure that they were, like I said, make sure they were ready. And make sure it was a good idea for me to go into that, because I know what that entails, and based on my own experiences and what I've been through, that's not something I'm just gonna, hey, whatever, we got this. I'm not gonna just go into that lightly, because I know how difficult that can be, and for that person, and especially if they're not really ready, they may say it, but they're still not really dealing with it, and they may be drinking or doing drugs, or they may be just completely avoiding it in one way, shape, or form. So. Or they may take it out on me. So, like, that's another thing. You don't. I don't want to walk in that type of situation. So, it doesn't mean I'm just gonna write that person off. But I'm gonna, really get to know them, and that's what I was saying. Build that friendship.
So, Jackie, thanks for chiming in. And you said Mike does not represent the average man with that notion. Really, like, you think that low of us that we would automatically just write someone off just because they have a diagnosis? Now, I'm going to admit, like, there are certain diagnoses that I think I want to stay away from.
I mean,
like a person
borderline.
Yeah. He said it. I didn't say it. But a person literally diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, or narcissistic personality disorder, or some level of schizophrenia.
Yeah, I mean,
in there, because I've experienced those, and if it's severe, that their affect and their ability to kind of actually look at it from not skewed.
Personality disorders are a little different, because the whole, a lot of the big thing with the personality disorders, it can be super damaging for the other people around that person.
Right.
So that's one, as a therapist, we're more knowledgeable about those things, and we're definitely gonna walk very cautiously around someone who's struggling with that, because that can be very damaging to us too.
Right.
That's a whole nother, that we could talk about that for an hour.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of different topics that I definitely want to dive in when we're talking about relationships and mental health. There are a lot of different ways, a lot of different things that we're definitely going to address in the future as well. But I definitely wanted to at least start the conversation today. Again, with the couch, we're here to reduce the stigma associated with mental health. And one of those things, as I said at the beginning, it's over 60% of the people that are in relationships suffer from some type of mental health disorder. So 6 out of 10 of y'all that are on this live got some stuff going on. Sorry. Not sorry. But, we all got something. So, I mean, it's relatively accurate.
And I mean, that's a reflection of our society as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't live in the healthiest society right now, and that's why a lot of us have issues. I mean, it's not that there's anything wrong with human beings. It's the society that we live in.
It is something wrong with
human
beings.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
It's a lot wrong with
the way we
beings.
live our lives, realistic, individual, selfish society. That affects everything. So
yeah.
And relationships are one of the things that gets affected the most.
That's the number one thing, because we are all here and we're built on relationships and love and connections, and when you don't have those things and they're not healthy, it's almost like lack of relationships or dysfunctional relationships can lead to mental health. And vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, if you feel loved, if you have a core family, whether it's family members or friends that you can count on, and you have a sense of community and a sense of purpose in life, chances are you're most likely not going to have mental health issues. But in this society that we live in, unfortunately, those things are, we got a lot of divided families. We got parents that are working constantly just to make ends meet, or we have abuse and neglect that have generational. We have all sorts of things. We live in a materialistic society that doesn't value spirituality and relationships like it should. We work too much, so we don't have enough time to spend with our families and our friends, and it's more stressed about how much you can produce, versus how much time you can spend nurturing relationships. So
exactly,
it's not valued at the core of our society, although some of us value that at the core, and of course our spirituality and our religions value those things. Our society does not. That's not something we talk about on the news every day. We talk about,
45.
What's that?
45.
45.
We talk about him.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly.
So again, we definitely want to take this time, and definitely from a male's perspective, address relationships and mental health, and how to deal and how to cope from an individual standpoint as well as from a relationship standpoint. If you're in a situation where you're dealing with symptoms that are abnormal, we're always going to have issues as far as being frustrated, being irritable, being angry, or being depressed. But when it extends, out of the norm, or it happens more often than not, or these mood swings are daily, you just don't know who you're going to get when you wake up the next morning. And they could be, lovely and everything, and the next day it's kind of like, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type thing. So
and that's just a sign that there's unresolved issues, is what it is. It doesn't mean that person necessarily is going to be that way forever. Right. And that's another stigma I don't like about mental health, is that just because you're depressed doesn't mean you're going to be depressed your whole life. Right. It's just a short-term thing, and unfortunately a lot of times it's looked at as a long-term thing that's going to be there forever, and that's not the case if you deal with it and work through things and learn healthy mechanisms to deal with it and build healthier relationships on top of that, so that you have that support system and that sense of family and belonging that we all need. So,
because I think that's one of the main things, especially with people who suffer from depression. It kind of tells you mentally that no one is going to understand you. Everything is going to go from sugar to ish. So you would rather just stay by yourself, isolate. And then when you isolate yourself, and I'm lonely, nobody loves me, all these things.
Yeah, and it just gets worse.
And it just gets worse. So it is very important to maintain, healthy relationships, develop those things with like-minded individuals and people that are going to lift you even higher.
And it's important to get rid of toxic relationships and realize that they're toxic, and be aware that they're toxic for you.
That is a topic right there. Jackie, I know you're listening and you will listen to this. Definitely toxicity and mental health and the impact it has on relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'll be awesome. Hey, Lysandra, how are you? Hope all is well. We up here talking about relationships and mental health. Check it out. So one of the last things that I did want to cover before we get out of here is, and I think we kind of touched a little bit on it, Mike, as far as like tips for people in relationships, kind of spelled out. I think we talked about definitely being supportive, providing that positive affirmation for people that are struggling with some type of mental health disorder. Also, being that person that's going to be there as far as like treatment, and do your research. You know, if I know my girlfriend struggles with anxiety and I know nothing about anxiety, you know, I may want to do my research.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely, or finding out from them personally what anxiety is like for them, because for everybody it's a little different.
Exactly.
And a lot of times people with anxiety feel like, you know, people don't take it seriously or don't understand them, and I think that causes a lot more anxiety because they're like, nobody understands me. Like, I can sit here and try to explain this to you, but you just think it's stupid, you know?
Right.
I think it's, you know, you have to have that willingness to learn and understand, and you know, and even learn. You know, go to them if they're getting treatment. Go with them if they want you to, and be supportive in that way. And then it goes back to the whole ecosystem thing. Like, you know, what you do to the other person is it's gonna affect them in ways you don't even realize, because it's an ecosystem. Like,
right.
You have to take care of each other. You have to, you know, protect that relationship and create, you know, good boundaries. And then also be like you know, aware that you need to take care of yourself if you're the person that's not dealing with the mental health issue.
Absolutely. That's like one of the biggest things is when you're with someone, whether that's in a therapeutic relationship, as we talk about all the time with self-care, because we get all these stories and, you know, these relationships with clients that we do have, you know, sometimes that transference that we receive, you know, affects us, you know, and it's important that we maintain self-care on that level. And it's the same thing with personal relationships.
Yeah,
you know, make sure that you're taking care of yourself in order to make sure that you're there to support them and to help them and assist them. Because if you're running on fumes and on E and, you know, your cup is empty, you can't pour anything into them to help them.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you know, taking care of yourself, eating healthy, getting enough sleep, you know, having your own, you know, hobbies of your own, things that you do to take care of, whether it's working out or exercising or hanging out with your friends or whatever.
Right.
Just things that help you to kind of be the best version of yourself. To help them be the best version of themselves, and vice versa. So,
and I think one of the biggest things is to understand what they're dealing with and being empathetic, being an empath, and trying to, you know, step into their shoes a little bit and understand their perspective, but also, you know, remaining calm in those times where you really just want to go off, you know, because they're having an episode, but with you being aware of them and you being self-aware, you know, try to remain calm and be supportive and protective of them, even with when they're not being protective of their own selves.
Yeah, definitely.
So definitely, guys, those are some tips. Definitely, Google is your friend. Research, do your research. We touched a little bit on tips. We touched, you know, definitely on what it looks like to be in a positive relationship and how it affects your mental health in a positive way. Because if you have a great relationship, then you're going to be in good spirits, which means you're going to have a good mental health, and you're being able to touch all of those things, the mind, body, and soul. You're nurturing those things. So even if you have a disorder, doesn't mean that that's going to affect you on a daily basis just because you've been diagnosed.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you just want to be with somebody who brings out the best version of yourself.
Right.
You know, they make you want to be a better person. You know, you make them want to be a better person.
Right.
I think that's what we all should be looking for.
Hey,
Whether we have mental health issues or not.
And we got Miss Elise Sadler chiming in. She says communication. You know, how important is it that you vibrate on the same frequency mentally with your partner? In regards to communication, I guess that's a question. She's asking how important is that that you vibrate, or you connect on that level mentally with your partner.
I mean, I used to think, you know, oh, I need to be with somebody that's got the same ways of communicating as me, like, you know, thinks the same way as me, and, you know, so that we're just like, we're meshed and we're just perfect together. But that's not realistic. Communication takes hard work. Everybody's different. You're going to learn things about whoever you're with that are totally different from you, no matter who you are. I mean, I guess there's some people, rare cases that are like, I don't know, some of those people look like brother and sister that are dating and they're like twins. But yeah, I mean, it just takes hard work. Like, you're not always gonna be on the same frequency. You're living different lives and you have different experiences, so different things are gonna affect you. Sometimes your partner's gonna be tired and you're gonna want to talk to them about how shitty your day was, and that's just not gonna happen, you know. So I think it's important, but it's that willingness. It's both people making that effort, meeting each other halfway, and you know, working hard to learn each other's communication
styles.
And knowing that it's not going to be perfect always, and that you have to learn each other, and it's going to take, that takes time. I mean,
it takes time, definitely. And I think just being able to communicate that, if let's just say you walk in the house and the first thing your girl says, she just want to tell you about her day, and you just had the most shittiest day with about 10 clients just back to back to back. Yeah. That's not the first thing that you really want to hear. And it's not that you don't want to hear her or feel her pain or whatever the case may be. It's just that you got your own issue that you're dealing with, and you know, it's going to take some time for you to kind of decompress, and that takes up, and again, that's a big thing with being self-aware and understanding what drives you and what motivates you and what is going to make you better for your partner.
Yeah, and being aware of your own faults and things that you need to improve.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's, like I was saying earlier, you know, like when someone has a mental health diagnosis and you don't, and you tend to try to act like you might tend to act like you're better than them in some ways.
Absolutely.
But you're absolutely not, you know.
Because everybody's
got issues, you know, and like just because you don't have some major issues going on at this moment doesn't mean that you're better than them. Like, you still have things that you need to work on to improve, regardless of whether you have a diagnosis or not. And like I said, a diagnosis doesn't have to be permanent either. So we can't look at it that way. I think that's a mistake that we make.
Yeah, and I think a big thing, especially, Lisa says good to see you, Mike.
Yeah, you too, Lisa.
Is that people that are in relationships and they're struggling from a mental health perspective, or just symptoms or just unresolved issues like we talked about, that lack of compassion and empathy plays a huge role. Like you said, like you kind of feel like you're better than that person when you just have something different. You have a different issue, and no issue is bigger than the next. So if I've got a substance abuse issue and you got some trauma, you know, like, that doesn't make me better than you just because, you know, I'm a social drinker and I'm able to function regularly.
Right.
You know, like, it doesn't make me better than you. And having that narcissistic type of personality or ways to express toward that person can be very damaging to their progress in their own treatment, as well as impact the relationship holistically.
Yeah, I mean, if they're just struggling with depression, you act like nothing's wrong with you, and like they're constantly a burden on you, you could damage them even worse.
Exactly.
You know, by acting like a dick.
and I've actually counseled families and couples and things like that, and some of the, I guess maybe the partner that didn't come in for treatment, but they're there to support, quote unquote, but they turn around and be in session and say, well, I don't really think that she's depressed. I think she just needs to get over it, and I think she just has an anger problem, and she needs to go to anger management classes. And
not validating their feelings.
Not validating. No. That non-validating environment contributes to continued symptoms. if I don't believe that you got issues, I'm not going to help you. What am I helping you for? Because you don't have any.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so we have to be compassionate and be able to show love how we want to receive love in relationships. And compassion is part of that. Patience is a part of that.
And, and trust, of course.
Trust, of course. Those are foundations, and understanding that, we're not perfect, and just because we have something that's identified as a diagnosis doesn't mean that we're less than.
Yeah.
Because at any point in time, on any day, if I have a effed up day, I can go to a therapist and they can diagnose me in something.
Oh
whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I could get in a car accident and be diagnosed with PTSD tomorrow. I mean, like that.
Absolutely.
Anything can happen to any of us at any time. So.
And as Honey B says, self-awareness is key. Many people lack it and have a false sense of it based off of conditioning. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those huge things that we definitely talk about on the social platform, the conversation that Elise is, that she runs. Her social platform, the conversation talks about conditioning and being able to converse and bringing people together that have different walks of life, different perspectives, and being able to voice those things. And I appreciate you, Elise, as far as that particular platform and what you're bringing to the table. Definitely check her out on Facebook as well. But yeah, so again, we're about to wrap up. Because I did see Miss Jackie said 6:57. She's like the timekeeper even when she's not here. But again, you're not here, so But I definitely appreciate you guys for chiming in your comments. As always, like and share this live. Check us out on Instagram at the Couch 704. All platforms. Well, I'm not gonna say all platforms because it's not Twitter and Snapchat. I need to get one of those.
I don't know, man. Don't get it on Snapchat.
No, for for the couch purposes.
Oh yeah.
Branding purposes. But check us out. Definitely Facebook, like and share this page with your family and friends. Someone could definitely benefit from this information. Instagram, the Couch 704. On YouTube, thecouch704.com. We're still building that. That's coming very, very soon. Before you know it. And we got some events on the horizon coming up for 2019. It's going to be a big, awesome year for the couch as we're going to continue to spread the word regarding mental health and reducing the stigma associated with mental health. Because why? Your mental health matters. Okay? So thank you for tuning in to the couch. See y'all guys next week. Look to see Miss Jackie back in the building. We got Mr. Mike Vroom over here. Check him out. He's a therapist. If you need services, he's available. Dynamic therapist, definitely. You got anything else you want to add to it before we leave out?
Oh man, appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Anytime you want to come on the couch and kick back, come on. This is what we do every week. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see y'all next time. All right, later.